Right, for those who want to know, Bungie are getting ready for their server slam for Marathon this weekend. And of course, it begins on the 26th of February at 10 AM Pacific time. So whatever time zone you're in, you can do the translation for that. In this one, we'll cover some new details about the server slam, what we'll actually play, and how to get access to it. So let's dive immediately into the info. In terms of preload for the server slam, it won't actually be a thing. Preloading will not be available, and this will help to lessen the load on our servers when we first go live. Preloading will be available though for the full launch of the game. Bungie haven't specified when, but I would assume it will be some point after the server slam ends next Tuesday. So in terms of how to actually get into the server slam, basically after 10 AM Pacific on the 26th, you'll be able to search Marathon Server Slam on whatever platform you play, which of course is Xbox, Steam, and PlayStation. Then the game should be available to download. In terms of progression carrying over to the full launch, Bungie have said it will not carry over, but earned launch rewards, including emblems, player backgrounds, and Twitch drops, will be granted to accounts on March 5th, and arrival caches filled with loot will be delivered to the account on the same date to help jumpstart your first runs. So basically, the objective to get those caches is to complete the initial mission for the server slam, and then to reach runner level 10 and 30 to unlock additional caches. And we'll go into some of the components of the actual endgame and what we'll be previewing in Marathon in just a moment, but in terms of what makes it a server slam, Bungie say it's a technical stress test, and they're turning everything on worldwide, inviting as many players as they can, and then watching the systems closely. They have said we will likely see login queues, especially during peak hours, and we may need to bring servers down for maintenance on short notice, as well as the possibility of running into disconnects, error codes, and bugs. And again, they reiterate, in terms of the content outlay for the server slam, we'll be able to infill into 2 zones on Tau Ceti, which is Perimeter and Dire Marsh, and experience early contracts for 5 of the factions, with progression through early levels and upgrade trees for each of those factions. We'll talk more about how they actually play into Marathon in just a moment, because factions form a massive part of the endgame and general progression, and also kind of act as a safety net for being able to acquire rewards. In the server slam though, we'll be able to drop in as a crew, run solo, and take advantage of proximity chat, which will be interesting encountering other players. They reiterate this is not the full game, just a preview weekend, and when Season 1 begins on the 5th of March, we can expect additional zones, factions, contracts, gear, progression, as well as some ranked play, with Season 1 bringing late game zones, outpost, and cryo archive, full contract progression and depth for factions, the 6th runner, which is Thief, as well as Season 1 unlocks and endgame content. There will also be Twitch drops if you plan on actually watching the server slam, so 5 rewards including a Twitch-sponsored kit, a profile emblem, a profile background, as well as a weapon sticker and weapon skins. Marathon has stickers, skins, and weapon charms, so all kinds of bits of minor kind of cosmetic upgrades for the weapons. And yeah, it goes without saying that this is a massive moment for Bungie. The server slam primarily is aimed at actually selling Marathon to players, where Bungie are hoping that fans of extraction shooters will be getting on board. We'll just have to see how all of that plays out. And it will certainly be one of the things that I'll be covering with regards to its performance, given how big of a deal this actually is for Bungie. So those are the new details, but I wanted to break down a few of the extra kind of nuts and bolts of how Marathon actually works as kind of initiation, I guess. Obviously, it's an opportunity to learn a bunch about the systems that we'll experience in Marathon. And a really big part that a lot of players are only just starting to get their heads around is actually a lot of progression to make, which ultimately creates replayability, and we'll get an example of that in the open playtest. So early faction progression will be unlocked. And while that progress won't actually carry over to the full launch, Bungie have outlined that completing the first mission will unlock a standard arrival cache, then runner levels 10 and 30 respectively will drop higher tier arrival caches, which basically are filled with mods, consumables, and other items that give us a bit of a leg up at the launch. And the early faction progress that we'll get to experience will give us a really good idea of Marathon's replayability and progression, and how that actually acts as a safety net as we lose gear and potentially fail extractions, right? Because as we level up the factions, a really big part of this is that certain thresholds will unlock permanent items which can be repurchased, or stat upgrades that just stick with us for the remainder of the season. So there are stat boosts that affect basic stuff like agility, as well as specific loot items which, once we've unlocked them, can be repurchased at any time. So the shotgun here for Arachne rank 2, and an energy amp that unlocks for purchase at SecGen rank 1. Of course, these are very early items in that progression system, but Bungie have said higher tier items will also be available at much higher levels. So this will act as a safety net for those who are worried about kind of losing their gear completely. All the way up to prestige level items will be earnable via the factions, and if we lose them, they'll be available for repurchase with some currency. So that's going to form a big part of Marathon's endgame and progression, and how the progression actually benefits us in terms of gameplay, right? This will include things like cores, so cores basically apply to a specific runner shell, but you've got stuff like impact siphons where incoming damage dealt to your riot barricade is returned to you as shield energy. Then there are implants which can be used on any runner shell in a match, and we've got stuff like distance runner where sprinting does not build heat for a short time after sliding. Other high-level items include stuff like Nimble Fingers, where opening loot containers pings unopened loot that is nearby. There will additionally be weapon mods like Ornithologist, where aiming down sights for a short time allows projectile impacts to create a distracting bird call. There's a really good clip here, I'll actually let it play. Drewski had the opportunity to interview Kevin Yanis from Bungie, and they outline what some of these items actually are, but also how the factions play into it, so check this out.
What's the power level of gold items and how transformative are they to gameplay? Kevin said gold items, aka prestige items, are our most powerful build crafting items in the game. When you find a gold item, it should feel like cheating. It should feel so powerful that you almost get the giggles from using it. We really tried to push the definition of what part of the sandbox the gold item is augmenting. Each faction has a set of upgrades that augment your runner, either through stat package increases or through passive benefits, like reducing the amount of takes for your heat to dissipate. Factions also have upgrades that augment your armory, so you can gain direct purchases to some of the higher tier versions of build crafting items like cores, implants, and weapons mods. Each of these upgrades lasts for the duration of the season, so you won't have to worry about losing them when you die.
So that sounds really cool on paper, and theoretically, having this kind of progression and replayability for Marathon will kind of ground the sense of progression in the game, right? And of course, gaining and losing loot totally has an impact, but factions kind of become the foundation and safety net to reacquire certain high-level items, so that's a big positive. If you're curious about some of the consumables and how they actually work, Bungie posted a clip here demonstrating the kind of stat boosts, medkits, signal jammers, and more, so it's another useful one to check out. So give me your thoughts on that stuff. Another component for the full launch of Marathon, but Bungie are adding weapon charms to the game, which are literally tiny bits of ornamentation, but depending on your platform, we'll get certain ones unlocked at full launch. So Marathon players on Steam will receive the Crowbar weapon charm, which is exclusive to that platform. Xbox will get the Emerald Clutch weapon charm, and unsurprisingly, Sony will offer a handful of ones for PlayStation players. So as we can see here, there's a Helldivers, Death Stranding 2, and Ghost of Yotai series of charms that will unlock for all players just based on their platform. A final thing worth highlighting ahead of the playtest here, but Rilo Gaming did a really good breakdown on the visual improvements to Marathon since the first playtest. And while of course the bulk of the art style persists, and I know some of that stuff's a bit divisive, in terms of graphics and the presentation of the game, it's moved along significantly from where it was like a year ago. So for the moment, that's it. That's the info you need on the open playtest, how some of the systems will work, the progression that creates for players, and more. Let me know if you're going to be trying it out down in the comment section. Keep it locked and loaded here for more content. I'm really curious to see if we'll get any kind of weird puzzles or juicy secrets on some of the maps, especially given this is a Bungie game. If we find any of that stuff early on in the playtest, I'll be sure to post it, but this is it. This is the big experiment, the big test for Marathon in a lot of ways. Safe to say it's a super divisive game so far, but how the game actually performs in the playtest in terms of player numbers and whether it holds on to some of them is going to give us a really good sense of how successful Marathon will be, and also, just on a personal level for all of us, we can figure out if we actually like playing it, which is kind of important. There we go. Keep it locked and loaded for more content, but otherwise, thanks for watching, and I'll catch you all very soon.
minutes remain. Repositioning. Bad news.